This is the 9th year that I've been in there monitoring the behavior of the gray fox. One of the ways in which this began was by accident. I had no intention of studying the behavior of these foxes. What happened was that I was birding one day, and I was coming down this old dirt road up there in the Palo Alto area, and I turned the corner, and ahead of me, sitting at the side of the road, was a gray fox. And I went, oh gosh, what is that fox doing there? My camera just went click, 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 click as I took step, closer and closer and closer. That little fox didn't move. It just stayed there, watching me. And I got closer. I got up to the gate, which was about maybe 20 feet from the fox. And when the fox decided, it turned and walked back into the bushes, just as pretty as you could be. So I thought to myself, there's a fox in the area here. I went back day after day after day, morning after morning after morning, earlier and earlier and earlier, and on about the 5th day of doing that, what did I see in the bushes across the road? 3 foxes. 3 of them. And it hit me, dawned on me right away. You've got a family of foxes here. So I sat down on the road. I happened to have a piece of paper with me, and I started jotting down notes as to what they were doing. Well, they were laying over in the grass on the other side of the road, and they were watching me. I was as curious about them as they were about me. And for about the next 6 months, off and on, I would go down into a place that I now call Fox Hollow, and I'd sit on the other side of the road on the wet dirt, and I'd jot down notes about what these foxes were doing. And then one day, they disappeared. They were there one day, and the next day they were gone. I had no idea where they had gone, and so I kind of gave up. But along about March, I decided to pay it another visit. Maybe they've come back. Maybe something is happening down there. I went down into Fox Hollow. I sat on the road, and I looked on up the road about maybe 100 yards. There were 2 foxes just going into the brush. That settled it. I was hooked. So I started watching, started going down into that area, and I sat there on the road, and I jotted down notes, and all of a sudden, what I was faced with was a little pup. This little pup was no bigger than a maybe, 10 inches long body-wise, and a big long bushy tail on it. It came out to the edge of the brush line, and it looked at me. And then it went scampering back into the bushes. A little while later, it came back out. But this time it didn't stay within the bushes. It came out onto the road. And I was blown away. I was just so amazed at this little creature who was coming toward me. So I sat and I jotted down notes. It didn't come too far that time. Over time, what began to happen was that these gray fox that I've monitored for the last 8 years grew to trust me. That's the only way I can assess what was going on. They came to trust me to the point where they would come out on the road, they would let me follow them, they would follow me once I got my trail cameras all set up. And they were 100% accepting. And that got me to the inside life of the gray fox. Instead of observing just on trail cameras and so forth like that, it was a whole different ballgame. And that's how come in this presentation that I'm making here, I was able to video and take photographs of the gray foxes for that period of 8 years. Now for the tragedy. In November and December of 2016, the area was hit by canine distemper. And it swept through the whole of the Baylands area out there as if Ebola was going through the area. It was contagious all the way around. And it killed all of the foxes that you will see in this presentation. But now, what I'm doing is, young ones are going to repopulate the open space now. It's not claimed by any of the adult foxes. So I'm monitoring the return, well, that's the wrong word, I always use that, but it's wrong. The repopulation of the Baylands by the gray fox. And at the same time, I'm going to be able to measure the impact of the gray fox on the rodent population, and most specifically, or better yet, the jackrabbit population, because when the wipeout occurred, the die-out occurred, there was an explosion of field mice, of wood rats, and of jackrabbits. All the rodent population just went, it just exploded out there. And so now I have the opportunity to measure the impact of the gray fox on the environment. Now let me see if I've got the right one. Yes. This is a little fox that I call Shy. She didn't stay with her siblings or her family group. She went off by herself. And until she dispersed, she was pretty much a loner. So this is a year with the urban gray fox, Eurocyanus cinerea argenteus, townsendii. It's presented by the Urban Wildlife Research Group and by me. A few years ago they started calling me the fox guy, and so I said, okay. Well, a few things about them to get an orientation. The urban fox versus the wild gray fox. The urban gray fox is more, they're born into the environment of people. They're born into neighborhoods. Although the research that I have done wasn't exactly in a neighborhood, it was on the edge of a high-tech complex. Well, the urban gray foxes you see more often, like out on golf courses and places like that. Whereas the wild gray fox knows that you're coming before you ever know it's even there. And it will take off into the bushes and hide until you've passed by. And then it goes along about its business just as normal as it can be. So baby fox, kits or pups or cubs as the English say, I call them pups, and I'm going to refer to them as pups. Most people call them kits, but they're a canine. So I call them pups, okay, when I'm talking about the young ones. And there's a tendency, people say they're monogamous. Some research back in South Carolina showed that they're not always. As a matter of fact, the conclusion in that research was that if there is a high population of gray foxes in an area, they tend not to be monogamous. But if they're well spread out and they've got a lot of territory to roam in and a good food supply, they will remain monogamous. I have had both cases occur out at the Baylands. So, some of the tribes in Northern California, the gray fox is a wise, benevolent creator god, while in others, the tribes like the Blackfoot, fox stole fire to bring to the people. Sometimes there are a lot of different stories. A lot. Why? What's the focus of the gray fox and all this storytelling? Well, the Uncle Remus stories, Brer Fox and is sometimes the victim, but Aesop, about 2,000 years ago, actually kicked the thing into motion. Aesop's fables, where Aesop comes up with a lesson, okay? They're teaching stories. And in the crow and the fox, the story goes like this. One day, Fox, really hungry, was moving through the woods, and he couldn't seem to catch any food. So here comes Crow flying in from out there with a big hunk of cheese in her mouth. And she lands on a branch not too far from Fox, and Fox says, "Oh God, I gotta get that cheese." And so Fox goes over to Crow. "Mrs. Crow, you have the most beautiful voice in the whole universe. I have heard you sing before, and I would love to have you sing to me right now." Oh, Crow is saying, I don't know what's this. But Fox keeps saying how beautiful her song is. And after a bit, it gets to her head. And she thinks to herself, all right, I'll sing for this fox. She opens her beak, and the cheese falls to the ground. Fox runs over there, picks it up, and looks up and says, "Beware of those who flatter you." And so the story goes. Is this on? No. I guess I'm going to have to use this. Let me put that in my pocket. This gray fox you see here is Rusty. I borrowed him from San Jose State University. I bought him offline and donated it to them so that kids in schools all over the county can see what a gray fox looks like. Excuse me, a gray fox looks like. So, oops, wrong way again. Okay, so a few of the behaviors, happiness, tail swishing, big time. You'll see some of that going on with some of the video that I have embedded in here. Tail swishing is a sign, hey, I'm happy with whatever is going on. And then we have the body. They tend to move in a very slithering kind of snake-like motion when they're in this submissive happiness that they exhibit every so often, especially the pups. And they are accompanied by squeaking chirps, some of which you probably will see in some of the videos too. But just know that when you see that behavior, they're happy. So the fox kiss, that was one of the things that I first documented. Pup to pup will come up and touch noses with the other one. Sometimes he'll touch on the side of the cheek. But in any case, when a pup comes up to an adult, that always gives that adult a fox kiss. And it's sort of like giving respect for the elder. That's my interpretation of it. And then the learned hierarchy and the implications for the pups. They are not innately born with a hierarchy in their group, their litter. They have to learn what that hierarchy is, and the parents, the adults, teach it very well, but not all of them get it right away. All right, so here we have one of the outstanding kinds of facts about the gray fox. It is the most basal of all canines. It goes back genetically 10 million years. We don't know exactly what branch it came off of, but it originated in Southern California and is now native to all of North America except for a few places, which I'll show you on a map in a minute. And it is, it's older than even wolves out there. It's old. And since they cannot genetically mate with any other canine, when you see a gray fox like Rusty here, you're looking at genetically a 10 million year old fox. Here's the landscape that they inhabit, all of that that's in the purple. And we don't know why they don't populate the northern Rocky Mountains areas. I've checked with researchers in Missoula, Montana, at the university there, and they don't know. And so there are those places where they're absent, but most of the North America, down into Mexico, Central America, and even into Guatemala and Venezuela. So they're widespread. They're not endangered. They've got a long life ahead. So let's take a look at some features here. The fox ears. The big ear is, of course, for picking up sound. They pick up a lot, but that secondary ear is to catch more subtle sounds and some of the good stuff. Here we have a comparison between the canine hearing and smell and the human hearing and smell. You can see that the foxes can hear more than twice what we can hear, and their olfactory is up to 300 million olfactory cells, and we got a mere 6 million. If you put it on a hierarchy or a chart, I say that the gray fox uses its hearing more than it does its smell, but they are very, very, very close to one another in terms of usage. They can be blind and they can still make their way around the world. So this is when you watch this video, I want you to pay very careful attention to, let me see, the ears and the way in which that fox is assessing the situation under 4 feet of snow. This is a red fox, not a gray fox, but it's the only one I could get that demonstrates how a gray fox hunts.
It listens for the tiny sounds of its prey moving about below, but must take great care not to scare them away.
That bounding leap that you just saw there, And the calculations that have to go on inside that fox's head in order to intercept that mouse that's under the snow here in weeds and grasses and you know, elsewhere around, like at the Coe Park, they have to be able to do some incredible calculations before they make that leap. And I have seen that leap live. I've not been able to record it. It happens pretty quickly. Now, most people have never heard a fox. This is a little fox I call Cute. I never gave these foxes scientific names because I saw that they all have distinct personalities. Well, not personalities, that's you and me. Foxanalities. And they're different. Each one of them is different. It's got, you know, their own foxanality. So let's hear a fox. That little whistle that she gave in there, I had heard that before I ever recognized that it was a gray fox making that sound. I always thought of a bird. It sounds bird-like. And so that got me really confused until I saw things like this happening with Cute. Now, when they bark, they're oftentimes annoyed at something. There's something going on that they don't like, and they're saying, the first time I ran into that was I was between a female who was over there by the gate, and her pups were back in the bushes behind me, and I was intercepting her path of travel. And she stood there on the edge of that, by that gate over there, and she barked and barked and barked and barked, and I finally got word, oh, I understood what was happening, and so I moved out of the way, and she went zap right through, not very far from where I stood, and back to her pups. She didn't want me there, but I came back. Anyway, Young arrives, dating November through late January. By now, the young ones that were born last April in your area are pairing up to have pups in April. That's when they have their pups in this part of the world. In colder regions, it varies. But that's what it is. So anyway, the female decides on which male she will accept as a mate. He has not very much to say about this, but my experience has been that the female will choose a male that is a good hunter. If we take a look at this, they have a period of getting along together. They have a period of play before they have their pups. They have to set up the den. They have to set up the territory. They have a lot of work before they ever have those pups. And so there is no territory at this point in time. In other words, there's no defended territory at this time. And that gives the young ones that are dispersing through the environment freedom to travel without having to confront some adult that says, no, you can't go here. This is my territory, not yours. So they relax those territories for a while. And then they are polyandrous at this pre-pup period, and when they finally pair up, it's all business. So, the gray fox mama bold in labor and den moving day. I caught this on my trail camera one night at 12:02 on a rainy night. Mama bold is going to have pups. And she wound up right in front of my camera. And after this video that you're going to see here, they spent the next 16 days back in the natal den, and then she decided that she was going to move the den, and that's typical. They don't stay in one den, they move around. And so she tries to get she knows where she's going to set up the new den. She gets the rest of the foxes, the pups. She carries them by the nape of their neck, carries them back. It took her a day, almost a day, to accomplish this feat. But what we're going to see is what the young ones actually want to do. That was the very first time that those little pups had ever left their natal den, as far as I can tell, okay? And they didn't want to leave. I mean, that's all they knew, you know? That's why she had to then pack them off to the new natal den. And that new natal den was a series of polyethylene pipes, okay? And it was pretty brushy around the area where these pipes lay. And so the pups made them whole. And the adults couldn't fit in the pipes, so it was only the pups that got in there. Along about through September, we have the order of the night or day, sometimes the hunt. And here we have Gray. Gray is the male, Mama Bold's mate, okay? And I knew from the very beginning of when they paired up, I knew that Gray was a master hunter, and he proved out to be exactly that. Not all gray foxes are good hunters. Some of them are weak. But anyway, you want to shoot this one? And let's take a look at, this is one of the first. And so the pups are venturing out a little bit more and more. I meant to mention too that they cache their food. Okay, when they catch let's say a jackrabbit like Mama had there, when they are full, they just go bury it. And I'm having to follow up on something having to do with this caching of food that I haven't been able to do, but I've seen it twice. When they uncover the food that they have cached, it has surrounding it a kind of jelly. And I don't know where that jelly comes from, whether it's from the saliva of their mouth when they chew it up and then bury it, or exactly what. That's one area that I'm really vague about. But I'm going to, as chances present themselves, I'm going to pursue more on that topic. So, here's Gray with the essential rodent. Rodent is their basic food. Okay, although they're omnivorous, and during the course of the year, when they have, when there's fruit on trees, they will climb up into the trees and eat the fruit. And these are the only foxes in North America. There's only two exceptions to this. What is it? The Asian raccoon dog and the bat-eared fox of Africa. Those two can climb trees. The gray fox is a tree climber too. Red fox can't climb trees, neither can your dog. So, anyway, they eat fruit during the season, they eat rodents during the season, and especially when the pups are really, really young, they are strictly on a meat rodent diet. And from there, it evolves into other things. And I think that's part of the reason for their survivability. They are not dedicated to one source of food. They can eat anything. And here is Gray with a young Canadian goose. When they kill, they go for the neck, they pop the neck off, throw it away, and carry the rest back to the den. I followed Gray on this particular day, and I took numerous pictures of him as he walked along in front of me, going back to the den to where his pups were. And when he dropped that fox in the den at the feet of the pups, he just went over to the side and lay there and pant. He was very, very tired from hauling that Canada goose in. But that gives you an idea of how, I mean, that Canada goose is almost as big as he is. And then, this particular afternoon, I was going back into the brush, into a big clearing that was back in the brush. It was a terminal point for 5 different corridors leading into an area in and out of an area of the Baylands. So I put a lot of trail cameras down in there on each one of the corridor trails. So I'm coming back to take care of my trail cameras, and behind me is Cute and 2 other foxes. They're following me. And I didn't pay much attention to them, except that when we got into the clearing, I noticed that Cute had her nose up in the air and she was sniffing. Something had been there, and then all of a sudden she went bam, and she dashed off into the brush. I went about my business, so with my trail camera over here, and I happened to look up. And when I looked up, there she was, as you see her here, up in that tree. And I'm saying, whoa, wait a minute now. She's after something. So I turn on my video on my camera, and I caught her in the act of hunting in the trees. Mike. It's like that. She fell into the blackberry vines down below her. She missed, of course, and it's like that little black squirrel up there is either chiding her or laughing at her or something like that. Anyway, that's typical of tree hunting and what they can do. So here we have fight over food and the gray fox hierarchy. These, you can see right here, those are the polyethylene pipes that the pups made their own. There's another one over here. So, you want to shoot this one off? They haven't yet learned that the hierarchy is absolute at this point in time, anyway. So they have they have to learn as they go. And learning to hunt. There's one sticking his nose out from underneath the pipe, and the other one on the other side over there. And let's see what they do. So in all that chasing and that they wrestle with one another, it's not in this scene, but with their chasing and so forth like that, that's all in preparation for the hunt, okay, and to kill. And so, Mama and her pups. A female fox has 6 breasts. She has 5 pups. They're growing. And as a result, there's not always room under her to feed, to nurse. And so, let's go with this one. And so that little one that's off there to the side is probably going to come back once 1 or 2 vacate. They've had enough under there. Anyway, let's see. What do we have here? Sometimes the pups meet others. Oh yeah, this is really typical of gray fox pups, and even when they get to be adults, they act in the following manner. And so they tend to give each other a wide berth, or, to where it's comfortable. But skunks are really an interesting addition here. They are the most bodacious and challenging of all of the wildlife that I've come across in terms of my work. And they will challenge anything. And the other part to it too about skunks is that they do not shoot their perfume very often. They tend not to, unless they are really cornered and you got your dog, hassling them or something like that. But in the ordinary world of wildlife, even when they're challenged, they don't usually squirt. And so, learning to climb, they have to learn how to climb. It's not an innate thing. But here's something about that climbing activity that they do. They have semi-retractable claws on their paws, okay? Which means that they're partly exposed. What they do when they're going to climb, and they can climb straight up a tree, they will grasp with their forepaws up as high as they can and push then with their hind legs. And they pull, push, pull, push, pull, push up the tree. And it's really fast. It's faster than a squirrel when they want to go that fast up a tree. And so that's a learned thing that they get to do. And here we have the pups trying to do just that, trying to learn. Yeah, happiness and submission. This is the alpha gray fox of another region along Matadero Creek, and this fox, a male, I call Dark, and in all of the pups that he and his mate had, they only had one a year, whereas Mama, she had 4 to 5 a year. They can have up to 7. Okay, so here's the way Midget, his pup, greeted him on this particular night. So that kind of is an effusive greeting. One of the things about Dark was that Dark was not a very affectionate fox male, and this is one of the rare times. There's one other time when I saw him being affectionate toward Cute, but most of the time when Cute wanted his attention, he would walk away, and that's just the way he was. He was aloof from his own pups and his mate as well. So, the essential grooming, vermin and ear cleaning. In the spring and into the summer, they get all kinds of vermin in their fur. Okay, ticks and chiggers and mites and so forth. They just populate their fur. And they scratch and they scratch and they scratch. It's that time of year I would not want to be a gray fox. They sometimes scratch so hard that they create a channel in their fur where they scratched and scratched and scratched. It almost sometimes looks like mange, but it's not. Anyway, the other part of this is alo grooming. Okay, one fox grooms another fox. And in ear cleaning, since they need to have those ears wide open all the time if they're going to be successful on the hunt, they can't allow the ticks especially, but other vermin, to get very, very deeply into their ears. So they have a practice. Whenever a fox has too much vermin in their ears, another one will come along and lick it right out. And invariably, when they do that, once they get a big slurp and they're devouring the ticks and all the stuff from in the ears, they smack their lips. They go, and then they go back and do it again. Well, this, the one with the blue tag in his ear, right here, I called him Blue. Okay, obviously, he was a blue tag. And that little fox absolutely had a compulsion to clean ears. And so, especially with the females, all of the females he could get a hold of, he would clean their ears even if they didn't need it. And if they resisted, which some did, he would sometimes clamp his paw on their head and hold them down to the ground until he had finished cleaning that ear. And then he'd let them up. And then they'd usually shake themselves off and head off into the bushes somewhere away from Blue, you know. But he was kind of a magical fox. He came into the area when, after tagging, it took him 2 years to come into the area, but he came and he stayed, because there were a lot of other gray foxes in the area. That means that there was a lot of overlap in territory. It was almost in this area, along Matagorrow Creek, there was no real territory. It was shared by 3 different families, and they were living almost like neighbors. They even took so far as to help raise all the other pups in the area. So it was a mutual, like, get together and we'll help raise everybody. Daring. When control gets crazy and insecurity governs, this is what happened. She turned out, and in the video, by the way, I refer to her as him. She is the alpha pup of the litter of 5. And what she did in order to control her siblings is she fought them. She would fight at any turn, any time she wanted to, and she was a fighter. Okay? I've seen other foxes that are like that too. But I think she needed to have absolute control over her siblings. And so one day, after I came back from Montana, I was out in the field and I was looking for the foxes, and here they come. Little old Daring leading the pack. She had a chopped ear. Her ear was bent down, the cartilage had been broken out of that ear, and her hind leg was damaged. She was limping. And she couldn't make it very well, but she came into the clearing area there. What happened was, over a period of about a week, The other pups, knowing that she was handicapped, decided that she was no longer going to be the alpha female of the litter. They elevated somebody else to the top job and put Daring down at the bottom. In other words, Daring got the food last, whereas all the other pups in their hierarchy fed in order. When she, after about a month, she made a remarkable recovery. And in that recovery, her ear started to pop up and regain its erect stance on her head, okay? And her hind leg healed. She was once again able to climb trees, and she was able to, the repair on her ear gave her the ability to hear once again. And you know what happened? The pups put her back on the top rung, elevated her back up to her natural position as the alpha pup of the litter. So here we have a series of events. The tree climbing, I found myself in the middle of a tree climbing school. Gray brought all of his pups into this one area one Sunday morning, and he showed them how to climb fast, really speedy, up and down, around, bounding from limb to limb and so forth. This is about all I caught with the video.
Here comes another. We got 3. Now we got 4. Oh, this is going to be interesting because that's Daring. And how well can he climb with 3 legs? Not too well. So Mama goes over and she kind of pays attention to him, because she knows that he can't do some of the things that a fox is supposed to be able to do.
And so I don't know if you caught it or not, but in that one scene there where she's coming back down out onto the ground, her ear is flopped. You can see that, and she couldn't climb because she couldn't push with her hind legs well enough to be able to get up the tree. She wanted to join her siblings up in the trees, right? Sometimes things don't go right. This is the little pup Tense, and she's approaching Cute. And Cute never did like Tense. They had to live nearly side by side, but Cute didn't like Tense. That's just all there was to it. So let's see what they do here. So sometimes that's what happens. A fox fight, usually if it's 5 seconds or longer, it's a long fight. Okay, they tend to scrap and fight, and it's fast like you just saw there, and then it's all over. And here's Midget and Tense Midget was, they were friends and foes alike. Sometimes they'd fight with one another, and sometimes they'd get along and just travel through the brush and through the region out there together. I don't know if they hunted together, but they kind of palled around together. So, November through December, and then they disperse sometimes. They don't always disperse, and that leads to some real serious problems. And here we have what's called an earth of gray foxes. When you have a bunch of gray foxes like this, sometimes they're called an earth. And dispersal. Why? Well, most of the time people will say, well, they've got to go out and find their old mate or something like that, you know. But there's an underlying reason to why they disperse, especially for the males. Okay, Dark always at a certain time of year, along about mid-January, he would chase all the males out of the area. And he would continue to chase them and chase them and chase them out of the area when they came back, until they said, okay, I give up, and they'd stay on the other side of the creek. And one of the things that they do, one of the reasons why that's so, is because if a male stays in an area where the adult female is living, it's possible, and I have video to prove this, that inbreeding will take place. So the alpha, one of the jobs of the alpha male is to make sure that all the males in that region are out of there by the time she comes into estrus. And when he's successful in doing so, then everything is good, okay? But sometimes that doesn't happen. And that did not happen with Dark and Cute. They left one of their pups, a male, living in the area without chasing him away for far too long. And I happened to catch on video the inbreeding taking place. I'm not showing it here. That's one piece of video that I'm going to keep. I don't know, I might include it in some other presentation, but not now. And then Pale. Pale is a female from Mama Gold and Gray. And she started to disperse like she was supposed to, okay? But what happens is, I said earlier that these foxes live right on the edge of a high-tech complex. She went off into the parking lots of the high-tech area, because there's lots of rodents out there, and she was going to disperse into that area. After about 2 weeks or so of being out there, she gave up and came back home. She was greeted positively by her mom, Mama Bold. Gray had ambivalent feelings for her coming back, but he tolerated her. And this scene here is right after she comes back for the first time. And we can see the relationships of these three foxes: Gray, Mama Bold, and Pale. Now, the one that left was Gray. Mama is Right there, and that's Pale. And you heard her squeaking and saw the tail swishing and so forth like that. She was really, really happy to come back home. But she paired up with a little fox that I call Blackie. This little fox was one amazing, amazing little gray foxes. The very first time that I ever confronted him, the very first time I ever saw this little gray fox, he came trotting through the brush, coming over onto this trail, and came up right in front of me, about from here to Rusty, and just looked at me as if saying, "What are you doing here?" And from then on, I mean, he teamed up with Pale. They had a den about 300, 400 yards away from where Mama Bold and Gray had their home range. And they got along okay. Mama would come over to their place and visit, okay? And as that happened, Blackie and Pale would sometimes go back over to their home range. And one time, I was down on the road, and Blackie was there, and Gray saw him, and Gray chased him back into the brush. Gray chased him so hard, I never saw Blackie again. He left the area. He knew that he was not accepted in there. And then Pale teams up with Big Guy, who was from way over in Matadero Creek, and they were going to make home in that region that they took over, okay, until the die-out occurred. I was hoping to see pups from those two, but it never happened. So so the second year, the return of the adults to their home range, they sometimes take vacations after all the pups are gone. They come back and they reestablish themselves in the same territory, in the same natal den, again and again and again. I have one natal den that has been used off and on continuously for more than 25 years. And the only reason I know that is because one of the guys that works at the water treatment plant, which is next door to that natal den, he had been following the foxes since 1990, when he first went to work at the water treatment plant. So he knew how long that den had been occupied. And so one of this little fox here is called Squat. I have to do a whole presentation on him because he is so seminal to my knowledge of the gray fox, or what I think I know about the gray fox anyway. He taught me the basics, and everything that I've learned since is just built on top of what Squat showed me. From the time he was a little pup coming out on the road, and I documented his behavior. He is the one and the same that I mentioned first when I first started. And so, Squat has a message for us all. And it goes like this. Science has clearly shown that we gray foxes and other animals that inhabit the night are not just hardwired automatons running through the thickets on what you call instinct. We are thinking, feeling, conscious, sentient beings. We show affection for one another. We are sometimes jealous because one pup has more attention given. There are times when we are happy, while at other times we mourn our loss. Because we are in such close proximity with you, we lose our food supply and our habitats because many of your fellow human beings fail to understand our needs and our lives. Instead of destroying our habitats, our corridors, our ancient natal dens, please help to preserve these regions and treat us with respect. In turn, we will be a boon to the ecosystem as we work to keep it healthy for both humans and wildlife alike. Respectfully, Squat the Elder. Thank you. Now we're a little bit over time. I don't know what you want to do about that. Can I take some questions or, yeah? Does anybody have any questions?
Well, at the beginning I saw the little fox, looked like he was on an overpass or something when you were talking about the hearing and stuff. Does that, because their hearing is so sensitive, does all that noise affect them at all?
Yes, I think it does. Right along Matadero Creek, Highway 101 is no more than a stone's throw away from there. And I think it does have an effect upon their hearing. Whereas if they're out here in Co, you know, it's relatively quiet and they can hear much better. Yes, sir.
You had mentioned the distemper that that swept through the colony. Where did this come from? Dogs, I take it?
No, I asked that very question of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife head veterinarian. She did the necropsies on the foxes when they were dying out. And she said that canine distemper in the wild is endemic to California. She said, I get die out occurring, not as large as what you had, but I get at least one a year. And she said, we can't tell. Yes?
How old do they live to?
How old do they live to? They live upwards of 8 years, 9 years. In captivity, they've been known to live for 15, so it's similar to a dog.
Is the red fox introduced in California, or is there a native red fox?
Without going into detail, there are a few native red foxes, but they live up in the high Sierras and in a very tight little place in the Sacramento Valley. The rest of the red foxes, the ones that you see more often than not, are imports from Europe, and what they were brought over here for was for their fur. And they got away, and they have populated. They're the most widespread foxes in the world. They're everywhere. They're in Australia, they're in China, they're everywhere. And so, yes ma'am.
I heard that they're more gregarious than the gray fox, and that they will drive the gray fox out.
The red fox will drive the gray fox out. The gray fox, yes, that's true. But more likely is that the gray fox just moves itself. They aren't chased out. Because the red fox will feed on the pups of the gray fox. And the gray fox know that, and they keep their distance. They don't let them hang around. But if you have a population of red fox move into an area, and the gray fox move out of the area, once the red fox move too, then sometimes it's a changing pattern of territory out there. Then the gray fox will come back into an area that they once had before the red fox took the territory over. Yes?
What's the relationship between coyotes and gray foxes?
What's the relationship between coyotes and gray foxes? Gray foxes are good food for the coyote. They don't hang around close to one another either. Back further.
Yes, you said, well,
the red foxes are only located in a few areas in California. Are they the fox species that's most widely spread throughout the world, the red fox?
No. The ones in the Sierras are native red foxes. Dr. Ben Sachs up at UC Davis is leading the research on that project, and he has a lab behind him, okay, and so genetically he can check to see what, you know, the genetics of the foxes are. And he has determined that those are the only two places in the world where those red foxes, the native red foxes, live. One more? Well, thank you for allowing me to be here. By the way, I wanted to add this too. I volunteer at Don Edwards over at the visitor center, and I give a walk talk the last Saturday of every month, where I take people out and show them scat and a lot of different kinds of things along the way.
Which location? Where they have more than one site?
It's up at the Fremont side.
The Newark one? By the bridge?
Yeah, Dumbarton Bridge.